in politics, to disagree with grace is what we do instead of killing each other. Charlie was at this rally. He was talking about transgender violence when the sniper took him out. But the last question he answered before that was about the Church of Latter-day Saints, where we've been having a little bit of a conflict and controversy here at the Daily Wire. And this was Orem, Utah, which is all Mormons. And like I said, I've been there many times, and I loved it because it was like visiting the 1950s. It was like kids, riding their bikes down the middle of the streets, happy families, together families, lots and lots of kids, and beautiful, beautiful place. And Charlie was asked about Mormonism, which of course he didn't share, as I don't share it. And he said, he was talking about, stuff you've heard on the show too, about that it's all about God. It's about praying to God. And when you're talking, especially when you're talking to God, even when you're arguing with God, even when you're shouting at God, even when you're angry at God, if you're talking, the door is open and the road is open. The path to truth is in front of you. And I think that's true when 3 or more people are gathered together and they're talking and they're listening. I think even though each one of them is wrong, the path to truth is opened up. Charlie borrowed a lot of things from other conservatives and put them to his own uses. He learned from those who had gone before him. He used to say to people, if you disagree, come to the front of the line, which is something Ben always says. I always tell people when I give a speech, if you disagree with me, sit quietly until you figure out where you went wrong. But Ben and Charlie would say, if you disagree with me, come to the front of the line. I want to talk to you. And he was always ready to debate, and he would use Crowder's "prove me wrong," and he would do it with a great deal of grace and friendliness, though intensely. He would argue his case very, very clearly. It was amazing, I thought. I was really impressed because I don't do that kind of thing. I don't think that fast. I was always impressed with how quickly he could get to the heart of what he was trying to say. These things like prove me wrong and come to the front of the line, these are not things you copyright. This is not stealing something from somebody. These are things that people invent in their tools that we use because it's not really about getting our faces in front of people. It's about, helping the country that we love so much. And Charlie's warmth and humanity really were powerful. I just want to play this one other clip of him where he's talking to Bill Maher. Maher does this show where he gets stoned and talks to other guys, and hopefully they get stoned. Of course, Charlie didn't drink or smoke dope or anything like that, and so Maher offered him a drink, and he turned it down, and here is a little bit of that exchange, cut 3.
Drink?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
You don't drink?
No.
Or smoke pot?
No.
And you're married and super Christian. We're going to get along great.
This is going to just be perfect.
But can I just ask you, because I want to find out a lot about you, because you're obviously a super bright guy, but you do think that I have the right to live completely opposite than you do.
I think you can get as drunk as you'd like.
And you're that kind of an American, right? You're not forcing your opinions as.
I'm not here to say you can't. What are you talking about?
No, okay.
So what I love about that clip is if you're listening to it, you can't really see it, but it makes the drunken Maher look like what he is, just a little bit pitiable, not bad, not evil, but somebody you don't want to be because he doesn't condemn him, because he greets him with warmth. He says, "It's going to be perfect. I'm happy to talk to you, even though we're so different." And if you were a young person, I think you would walk away thinking, I kind of like the guy who's not getting boozed up more than the other, and that changes minds. That's how it's done. So look, at moments like this, when your heart is filled with the acid of anger and grief, these are perfect moments not to be making plans and not to sort of be talking about the future, because we don't know what the future is going to be. And all these thoughts come into your mind, and the absolute fury. And as I say, I'm not excluding myself in a single moment. I talked about this last week. I talked about the fact that in these transitional moments, violence is, I won't say it's likely, it's just one of the things that people do in transitional moments because power is changing hands. And as you know, powerful people don't like to give up their power. The guy like George Washington who hands over his sword is the rare guy. Like I said, I was talking about this last week and how it leads to violence. And during the George Floyd riots, I remember saying on my show, to you, they're making a terrible mistake because they think they've won. They think the fight for the country is over. They're taking off the masks and they're putting it all out there, setting the cities on fire and basically saying, you deserve this, America. They've closed our churches. They're burning the cities. They're declaring racism a public emergency, and therefore they should have, total authoritarian control, emergency powers forever. They think they could diddle the elections around and take away, you don't need any, it's illegal to check your ID. We want to have just write-in things and, and all the things that make it easier and easier to cheat. They're going to declare D.C. a state. They're going to rein in, so that they have those extra, representatives and senators. They're going to pack the court. They had things in the New York Times, op-eds in the New York Times, we should destroy the Constitution. They were not disguising themselves anymore. And I said this on the air at the time. They think this is their moment. They think this is the transitional moment, and they are wrong. And they were wrong, right? You thought they had entered the promised land of left-wing monopoly, and now they've found out, no, the tide is turning, the vibe is shifting, and they're exposed. I mean, what happened, as I've said a million times, what happened is the media exposed them. Guys like Charlie exposed them. Things like the DailyWire exposed them. Megyn Kelly, Joe Rogan. All of a sudden, it was like they did not have, and Elon Musk, let's not leave him out. He was so important. Remember the fury they unleashed on Elon Musk just for letting the opposition speak, for doing the opposite of murder, for letting the opposition speak. That's why you kill people. That's why you censor people, because you can't win the argument. And they did lose the argument. And so now they are inflamed and they're humiliated. And I think that is a very, very dangerous thing. Every day across America, thousands of women discover they're facing an unplanned pregnancy. Many feel scared, alone, and unsure where to turn for help. The statistics are sobering. Nearly 1 in 4 pregnancies currently ends in abortion. That's more than 3,000 lives lost every single day. But here's what gives me hope. Preborn network clinics are changing that story one woman at a time. When a woman walks into one of these clinics, something powerful happens. She receives a free ultrasound, and at that moment, she sees her baby for the first time. That simple introduction, mother to child, changes everything. The results speak for themselves. Over 350,000 babies are alive today because of this work. But it goes beyond just saving lives. These clinics connect mothers with faith, provide practical support, and help them choose life with confidence. Take Valeria's story. She came to a preborn clinic convinced she didn't deserve to have a child. Today, she has a beautiful daughter who's already bringing joy to everyone around her. Stories like this happen every single day. That's why your monthly partnership matters so much. For just $28 a month, less than $1 a day, you can directly save a life and restore what truly is a precious gift from God. If you want to be part of rescuing this generation, it's simple. Dial pound 250 and say baby, or visit preborn.com/Klavan. Again, just dial pound 250 and say baby, or visit preborn.com/KLAVAN. Together, we can save lives one heartbeat at a time. And if you don't have those arguments, that's when the violence happens, and that's why so many of them don't mind the violence. But let's talk about this. I want to talk about the violence. I told you last week, and I've said before, that I deeply oppose political violence because it's so rare that it leads to more freedom. It almost always leads to less freedom. And political violence isn't increasing. And so you go on the New York Times and they say, yes, there's terrible violence. Josh Shapiro's house was firebombed. And what about that horrible January 6th? Wasn't that just awful violence? And of course, no mention of the George Floyd riots, because that's not political. That's mostly peaceful, right? That's not violence at all, because it's just property, as one of their editors said. And the idea they're trying to get forward is there's violence on the left and right. And on the right, we keep saying, no, this is all leftism. And that's half true. That is half true. The left is worse. But let's be very precise, especially in this moment when the anger is so high and the grief is so high. Let's be very precise about why the left is worse and why, because we're not exempt. We're not exempt from doing violence. But let us make it clear, most of political violence in this country is from the left. And they're not worse because we're better people than they are. Put that thought out of your mind. Just trust me on this one. You may feel like we're better people than that, but I know a lot of left-wingers, many of them are lovely, lovely people. We're all messed up. We're all capable of terrible things. And the left is not worse because at the center left, they don't have anything to say. In a free country, there's always going to be a struggle between the many and the few, between the rich and the poor. The Bible teaches us that we have to treat the rich and the poor equally. It doesn't say, only love the poor. It says, do not be prejudiced against the rich as well. And that has been the American way because we know that the rich provide jobs, the rich provide creativity, the rich provide all these things. And so they shouldn't get any privilege before the law, but they should be treated equally with the poor. There should be I'm very much against this idea of minority rights. Everybody has the same rights. That's the point. And, so there are people on the left that we should talk to. I disagree with the left very strongly on almost every point, but they do have things that they do that I acknowledge are important because the left always wants things to change and we always want stability. Sometimes when things need changing, they see it before we do, at the center. Here's the difference between us. And President Trump talked about this in his tribute to Charlie.
On campuses nationwide, he championed his ideas with courage, logic, humor, and grace. It's a long past time for all Americans and the media to confront the fact that violence and murder are the tragic consequence of demonizing those with whom you disagree day after day, year after year, in the most hateful and despicable way possible. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now.
Here's the thing about that. He's talking about the radical left calling us Nazis. And by the way, he announced, Trump, that would posthumously award Charlie the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The difference between the left and the right is this. Our center is at the center of our movement. Our center, the central right ideas are at the center of our movement. The people they call far right are not far right at all. Ben Shapiro is not far right. I'm certainly not far right. If you played a speech by John F. Kennedy, Ben and I would probably agree with almost all of it. Not all of it, but a lot of it. I mean, John F. Kennedy was virulently anti-communist. He cut taxes. He was, this is an icon of the left, the Camelot of the left. He is what most of us are. We are not far right. We are center right. We are what people in this country have believed forever, okay? The problem is that the radical left holds the center of the left. They hold the high ground on the left. People who say literally insane things like men can become women or Trump is Hitler or let's get rid of the Constitution or let's pack the Supreme Court or let's show children gay in elementary school, things that were absolutely detested by everyone 15 minutes ago. Those radicals hold the positions of greatest power and influence on the left.